Welcome. This is user experience. I did not get to hear the previous person talk about user experience, but you'll probably be able to compare and judge me because she was probably way better than I was. She actually does that for a job. I just like fake it. So, hi. I'm Jason. I'm a developer fellow at Bitwise Industries. Holla. Developer fellow is a fancy way of saying seasoned developer, aka old. Right now, I run a cohort of developers, folks who have come through GeekWise Academy. We're running 2 cohorts side by side. It's really exciting because in the past, we've created cohorts that were based on like a technology stack. Like we're gonna do mean stack, or we're gonna do just Node, or we're gonna learn how to do Laravel or something like that, or it's a WordPress cohort. And so we bring on clients that need these types of services, and then we train the GeekWise students how to fulfill that work. So these 2 cohorts are actually based on business ideas. And so we're launching 2 businesses. And what's cool is we get to take our cohorties, as we call them. Is that what you call them, Matt? Cohort. Beth said you guys call them cohortions. Pretty good. So we take them through the ringer. And so the only reason I'm saying is I want to brag about how awesome they are. So for 2 weeks, they have gone from knowing nothing about business. They have created landing pages for the products that we're offering. And then on Friday, they launched, each cohort launched their own website. Like, this website's ready to go and present to the world. And I think that's pretty incredible. And a lot of the principles that we impart to those folks in those cohorts, a lot of the principles that I impart to my students, I used to teach at Patino School of Entrepreneurship, which is a magnet high school here in Fresno. A lot of that stuff is peppered through what I'm talking about today. What I'm not going to tell you to do is how to get a job as a user experience developer. This is more helping you understand why you need to do things and take the steps to create a good experience for your user. So I've been a designer for 20 years, a developer for 15 years. I still suck at all of that. Let me see a show of hands. Who's a developer? Okay. Who's a designer? What's this? Kind of. Okay. Okay, show of hands. Who's ever walked into a door before? Yeah, right? How did you feel when you did that? How does it feel when you walk into a door? It hurts, right? You feel ridiculous. You immediately look around to make sure no one saw you. Who do you blame? You blame the door? Do you ever blame yourself? Do you ever like, oh man, I should have known better? Yeah, I blame myself. Depends on the door. So I'm here to tell you that it's okay. It's not your fault. Walking into the door is completely the responsibility of the person that designed that door. Many of you are not old enough to remember this, but back in 1979, who was alive in 79? Raise your hands. Okay, thank you. My people. So 3 Mile Island was a nuclear facility. I believe it was in New York. But in 1979, they had a near meltdown. What happened was the guy who was in charge of making sure the coolant for all the nuclear stuff was flowing correctly, and there was an indicator light, and it was faulty. But it wasn't faulty because there was anything wrong with the light. It was faulty because of how it was designed. The light should have gone on to indicate that he needed to do something, and instead they had wired it so the light would go off when he needed to do something. So to me, like your check engine light, if it's on, you got to check the engine, right? But if it's always on all the time and then just goes off when something goes wrong, that's not how people think. And so that's how they had wired this thing up. So what ended up happening is he read the light incorrectly and flushed the coolant, and then everything overheated, and we almost all died because 3 Mile Island, it's a nuclear facility, right? Stuff melts down, you have a volcano, and that's what happens. You guys know what that means. Like when you have a meltdown, that's the result of the meltdown, is ultimately a volcano, because it goes all the way to the center of the earth, which sounds really cool, like a volcano in your backyard, but then it's nuclear and it kills you. So anyway, so when we fail to correctly interpret visual operational cues, we blame ourselves. I do, at least. That could just be my personality. But the reality is, it's not our fault. It's the designer who's at fault. All tangible products are, to some degree, designed. Everything that we interface with that's a tangible thing, like the seats that you're sitting in, the camera that is being operated over there, even the doors, all of those things have gone through a process of making intentional choices to make sure that it fits your ass, to make sure that your arms are at the right height, right? Can I swear? Is that okay? Okay, ass. All right, nice. Unfortunately, many of them are designed poorly. I'm sure you've interfaced with something and you're like, WTF, what is this, right? This doesn't make any sense to me. This is one I found, and I love this. So apparently in Britain, they separate the hot and the cold water, which doesn't make any sense, right? Because if you're like trying to wash your hands, it's like you either get scalding hot water or you get really cold water. And everywhere else, it's all mixed together. That's how faucets are supposed to work. Who's ever used a microwave before? Who's ever been frustrated by the fact that they never, ever, ever operate exactly the same way, that it's always different, right? The interface is always different. This is from a Prius. Does that make sense? Like if you had to make a fast getaway and you had never driven this car before, I would be dead, right? If someone was chasing me to stab my head or something, I don't know. Backwards?
But reverse?
Or battery? Seat warmer? I don't know, right? This happens all of the time. We live in a world where this shouldn't take place, but it does, unfortunately, because people don't take the time to understand how people are going to be using the products that they create. There's a wonderful movie called Objectified. It's a documentary. If you've never seen it, I highly encourage you to watch it. It's about industrial design, but the concepts, for those of you that are designing interfaces for people to use for your apps or your software, the concepts are exactly the same. Making sure that we're creating something that people get, that people understand. As visual designers, we want people to enjoy using our apps, our websites, and whatever tangible interfaces we're creating. We don't want them to crash into our core doors. That's a callback from the previous joke. Or melt down our islands. Our customers are precious to us, and yet we often make them feel stupid or incompetent when they use our websites or when they use our apps. And it shouldn't be like that. Everyone using something is having a user experience. Whether we want our users to have a good one is up to us. So sometimes it feels like the person who designed some of our products we use doesn't even know like who we are. It's like they've never met us before. And part of that is true, that they haven't met us. Some of the products that we use that are weirdly designed are designed in other places of the world. And we'd like to think that there's some kind of universal law of communication or some universal language that we all understand, but it's just not true, right? It's just not true. Geographically, things are different, how we communicate. Even over time, things are different. Words change meaning. And, the play button on stuff has meaning because of the original 8-track tape deck, right? No, not the 8-track, the cassette deck, because the tape deck just played as soon as you popped it in. The 8-track played when you popped it in. The cassette deck, that's where it started, right? Play, and then CDs, and then everything else, VCRs, DVDs, all these things had that same, I want to create an action. But at some point, in prehistoric times, in the 40s, 30s, 20s, that there was no play button. And so if I had been able to travel back in time with any kind of anything, an MP3 player or a phone or take them to YouTube, that play button has absolutely no meaning to them. So things geographically, socioeconomically, all of these community-wise, cultural-wise, there are a lot of things that are common and different when we're not part of those cultures. And so, yeah, these things don't make sense sometimes because they're not designed by folks who are living our lives, who are in the United States even. And it's not a knock against them. It's just their way of thinking is different. Their process is different. They're not sharing our experiences. So intentional and strategic user experience has the potential to raise conversion rates. Does everyone know what a conversion rate is? Anyone not? Kind of? I see a little head shake. Do you want me to tell you? I'll tell you if you want me to tell you. You want to know? Okay. So conversion rate is the rate at which people visiting our site buy stuff. So they convert from a visitor to a customer. In the real world, it's people that walk into the store and actually buy something. And most people that walk into Target buy something, right? You never go to Target and they're just like, I'm gonna see what they got this week, right? Maybe they got something I need to have. No, you got to have something. Even if you don't need it, you'll probably find something you need to buy. So imagine being able to raise the potential conversion rates by as much as 400%, 4 times what you normally would get, you can raise because of intentional and strategic user experience. So that means you made the choice to actually create a good user experience in your application or your website, whatever thing is taking money from people legally. You have the ability to raise that 4 times just by intentionally creating good user experience. Every $1 invested in user experience results in a return on that investment between $2 and $100. So the argument, okay, I'll start over. Yes, thank you. I got to say that joke. So that means literally there's no reason not to spend the money or the time to do user experience, to create a good experience for your users. If it costs $1, you're going to at the very least double your money back. And currently only 55% of companies are currently conducting any user experience testing. And so I think it's like a tremendous growth opportunity. That means like there's 45% a space for you to go in if you are not doing user experience design. If you're not designing for the user in mind, creating something that's going to be a good experience for them, you have space to go in and really make a difference. Okay. So our goals for today, I hope to encourage us to be mindful of our user's experience, to approach future design problems from the user's perspective, ignoring our instincts if you have to. As developers, we generally don't think of how it's going to look. We want it to function because we are so incredibly excited that we got that API to connect, right? We finally got Stripe working. My database, I finally learned Mongo, right? I am so freaking excited about that who cares what it looks like, right? It works. That's all that matters. It works. We need to ignore our instincts and we need to start making intentional choices to actually think about how people use the stuff that we create. Take the focus from our own humanity, maybe, and put it on the people who need to hear what we have to say in a way that they intuitively understand. So I love people. I think we are incredibly interesting. We're always learning. From the moment we're born until the moment our senses stop functioning, we're absorbing information. We're absorbing experience like sponges wrapped in 3-ply paper towels. Give us a little of your time, we'll even absorb some of you. We are a product of other people. Physiologically, psychologically, we're influenced, we're taught by observation, interaction within a geography, a community, cultural strata. We speak in a shared language. We have shared experiences. As developers, you have a common language. You have jokes. You have inside information that makes you part of a community. It makes you part of a family. We share that. We share those experiences. The effect of proximity is consubstantial lives. Over time, new words become born, abbreviations of shared speech combined with shared experience. To truly understand language, we have to know the word and understand the associated common experience. Have you ever been to a party, maybe at someone's house, and you feel left out? I'll give you an example. This is a better example. So when I was teaching 10th graders, they spoke in a language that I often didn't understand, but they instinctively knew. And it was weird because like you could see how the language would change within a couple days. A new phrase would come into play, and it was like they all just knew exactly what it meant, right? What was the one? I'm looking at Matt because he taught at Patino too. There was one, that's a mood. Has anyone ever heard that phrase? That's a mood, right? It doesn't mean exactly what you think it means though. And it would seem like all of my students started saying that immediately. And I felt left out because I didn't know what it meant. But I asked and they told me. And I still kind of didn't get it. But that was their shared experience. Because of their proximity, because of their age, their community, they were able to have some kind of commonality, something that they had together. And so for me, in order to communicate to them, it would be ridiculous. It was like my grandma, and when I was in high school, having that conversation. So if I say it's bad, that means it's really good, right? Grandma, come on. Even if I tell you that, for you to try and say that, it just sounds weird, right? It's just not right. Anyway, to truly understand these things, we have to know the word, but also understand the associated common experience. I once told my 10th grade online marketing students that I was planning on a little Netflix and chill with my wife over the weekend. And they were horrified, like literally horrified. And then when I learned why, I was horrified. I had no idea that was a thing that was like, I'd heard someone say that and I'm like, I like Netflix. I also, in addition to liking Netflix, like chilling. And I like my wife. That sounds like a great plan, right? Netflix and chill. Nope. Totally not the thing you say to teenagers or anyone in nowadays, apparently. So switching that human context, it changes the meaning of language. Yeah, it's shared, it's common, but it's also subjective, right? We have to know and understand what those shared experiences are if we're going to be communicating and providing an experience that is warm and welcoming, that is something that people feel like we understand them. Language is personal. We attach context through our shared experience. Successfully communicating through words to a specific group of people requires knowledge of their language and the context of their shared experience. To understand their language, we must also understand the experience that's common to them. When teaching my 10th graders about marketing, they really struggled with the concepts of empathy and pain points. Has anyone ever heard of pain points before, that phrase, pain points? Pain points are the motivational things that cause people to action. So either it's something that you desire, it's something that you're afraid of, and then there's a third one I can't remember. But there's three major ones. So they totally understood empathy and pain points, but the hurdle for them wasn't the knowledge of the definition of those things. It was understanding those things as they related to grown-ups, to adults. They'd never felt worry as a parent does. If you have kids, you worry about them. If they're not immediately in your sight, even if they're in the next room, you worry about them, right? Am I right, Matt?
Yes.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. So my students never experienced that worry or the terror of having to give a talk to a theater of people. That was something that they never had to do, and so they couldn't empathize with someone in that situation. And so when they would create marketing material for their clients, my students built websites and online marketing campaigns for actual businesses in Fresno. When they would create those campaigns, especially the social media stuff, was always, well, Mr. Cooksey, let's do a sale. Let's have a sale, right? Sale, sale, sale. Everything about them was all about money. That's all that they understood. They knew what it felt like when you had it. They knew the fear of losing it and then the shame of not having enough of it. That was where their world was at. So that was how they tried to communicate. And as adults, we see sale and we know that's the low-hanging fruit of marketing, right? It's experience marketing is where it's at now. I want to make sure that if you're marketing to me, if I'm going to spend my money at your company, I want to make sure you understand me and you know who I am. And I'm not just going because it's a sale, right? That's kind of ridiculous. Okay, so I have an embarrassing thing. Well, it's not really that embarrassing. Well, most of my life is embarrassing, so I guess in the scale or scope of things, it's pretty tame. So I'm a graphic designer, or I claim to be a graphic designer. I think I'm okay. And I've designed a lot of stuff. The one I am least proud of is this one right here. I designed this in 2000, 2001. I was working for a place called Pro Screen Signs and Graphics, and I designed hanging banners for downtown Fresno. It was the very, very, very early stages of the downtown revitalization. And so I got to make this banner. And they're a fantastic bunch of people, but they only gave me about 30 minutes to put this thing together. And so I didn't really put a lot of effort into. Well, at the time, I was proud of it. Oh, wow, I'm not anymore, though. What a tremendous opportunity, right, to design something for downtown Fresno. But why the hell doesn't the skyline look anything like Fresno, right? What city is that? Is it Fresno? It's not Fresno. It's not, I'll tell you. It is a bunch of square or rectangles I made in Illustrator, and I thought, okay, this is a city. I mean, it doesn't even look I've even been to downtown Fresno before, or even a city. Like, what city looks like that? It's really, really ridiculous. Nothing ties this design to Fresno. If you take away the word Fresno, this could be any city in the United States. Experiencing your own ignorance is just a powerful educator. What I should have done before designing anything was research. I should have gone to downtown Fresno. I should have looked at pictures of downtown Fresno. I should have driven around and taken photos of myself, gotten reference. I should have done what's called research. If I don't know the shared experience of a geography, a community, or a cultural strata, I must do research. I know what I want to say, welcome back. But without the visual context, that would have helped visually communicate that message. The words are weak, right? This, on the other hand, is a beautiful design. Absolutely love this. If you like graphic design, this is the kind of thing, if you were me, you would be like, yeah, I love that. Like, there are just some things that are just absolutely gorgeous. I could have done that 20 years ago. Well, maybe not, I don't know. But if I had done the research, I could have gotten closer, right? I would have at least put a freaking water tower in there, right? What says Fresno more than the water tower? And the welcome to Fresno sign too. So when we communicate visually, just as with words, we must understand the visual language that the listener speaks. Many times our listeners are only that unable to speak visually. They can still hear it and see it. They know when you spent 5 minutes on a design, right? Versus 5 hours to craft something that feels like it belongs to them. It feels like it was crafted for them. It feels familiar to them. So UX design is the process of intentionally creating an enjoyable experience for a user interacting with a created something. Digital interface, tangible product, static information. Users should feel smart when they use the thing that you've created for them. Think of eating a bowl of cereal. The experience is everything that the person eating cereal feels. There's taste, there's crunchiness, there's the milk, there's the temperature of the milk, there's the taste of the milk and the cereal together, and then there's the tools. There's your bowl and your spoon, and if you eat like me, you've got a napkin and a backup shirt because you're gonna get it all over you and your beard, Andrew. Yeah. So as an experienced designer, you have control over how well those things all work together to make a good cereal eating experience. That's your job. That's your job. And you might feel like, well, if I'm a developer, I don't have to be concerned about that. And you might not. If there is a user experience person that is at your disposal, or if you decide to work with a user experience person, that's fantastic. Hopefully they understand those concepts. But if you're working independently, if you're on your own, this is your job. You've got to think about who is using what it is that you're creating and how they're using that. And we've got to think about what's familiar to them. What is it that they know, what that they understand? So there's this book called The Design of Everyday Things by Don Norman. I read it a couple years back. It absolutely changed my mind. And the example he gives us of a door. So I mentioned earlier, like, raise of hands who's ever ran into a door, and that was a couple of you. We all know how doors work. It's not how doors work is not the problem. Our knowledge of doors is not the problem. Looking at that door, I know immediately which way the door opens. I know it's a push, right? Why? Because of the way the door jamb is at. But if I was a little baby, I wouldn't know that, right? But because I'm a human being, I've lived life. I've experienced many doors. I've met doors I've liked, doors I didn't like, But we know because of our experience, our shared experience, that there are visual cues that let us know what we can do with that door, whether we can push it or whether we can pull it. Or if there's a reason we shouldn't go through that door, right? There might be warning signs on there, sharks, right? I don't know why there would be sharks behind a door, but you never know. So we would hope that someone put a sign there. When we have a bad interaction, we do something that we expect a particular outcome based on our action, and we get the opposite of that back, we feel like we've done something wrong. Like, imagine eating that bowl of cereal, and you've got that spoon, and as soon as you put the spoon into the bowl of cereal, it flips over every single time, right? And that might be like a fun joke for someone, but it's not going to get any cereal into my mouth, right? The opposite is happening. Or like when I was, freshman in high school, my brother replaced the sugar with the salt and let me scoop on like 5 things of salt or sugar. I ate a lot of sugar when I was a kid. If you can't tell, I was fond of it. And the cereal was absolutely disgusting. And at first when I ate it, I was like, I didn't put enough sugar on the cereal. Like something doesn't taste right. And it was my brother. Anyway, jerk. So, no, actually, I love him. He's awesome. So when we have a bad interaction, we feel immediately like it's something we've done. We feel stupid. We have a bad user experience. We blame ourselves. Anytime we work with anything, we're having a user experience, right? Everything, whether we design it or not, there's a user experience with this coffee mug, with this microphone, with this computer. There's an experience that's always happening. No matter what we're doing, we're having an experience. And whether we have a good one or not is up to you guys. We don't want to make our end users feel dumb. We don't want to make them feel bad. We want them to feel smart. We want them to feel like when they click on this thing and what they were hoping to have actually happens, that is a great feeling. I remember the first time I used Photoshop and I started clicking around, just playing with stuff to see what would happen. It was very visceral and very real and immediate, and it would just change things. And I felt like a graphic design genius. We know I'm not, though, but I felt like I was, because the way the software was responding to me, it felt intuitive. It felt like it knew what I was trying to do. And then I used Quark Express, and that I hated the day I used that software. It was so completely unintuitive at all. You had to go through training. You had to have someone else show you how to do it. Nothing against Quark if you've ever used it. That's an old program. I don't think anybody uses it anymore. Anyway, we've had a bad reaction. We feel dumb, and we don't want our users to feel dumb. We've got to have clear and universal communication, though there is no such thing, I believe, as universal communication. Let's change that word up, and let's say we need to have clear and common communication. What's common to our community? What's common to us, to our group, to our people? And if you're not part of that group, what do? You got to do some research. You got to figure things out. As we go about our day, there's thousands of split-second questions we subconsciously ask ourselves about the functionality of things that we interact with. The door, the car, the coffee mug. Things talk to us. They do. They speak to us. They communicate to us. Good UX designers know how to speak that language because they have researched, because they know who you are that's using their product and how you're going to be using it. We can almost decipher how a thing works when the designer's done a good job of using the proper language to communicate its function. When we take a chance, we interact, we're successful, we feel smart, we feel amazing. I'm on your website. I click something, hoping to find some information, and I get the information I was looking for. I am happy, and I'm going to come back to your website. Designers, I think, are initially drawn to design because they recognize patterns. There's rules in design, not because someone said there was, but because There's a commonality. We as humans are designed, and design rules really are simply repetitions that we've seen over and over again. How do we create a good user experience? The product design trifecta. Is it useful? Is it usable? Is it desirable? User should tend to walk away feeling like they've had a good experience as long as we hit all of those things. But for software development, for apps and for websites, we can't really have that desirable, right? I don't desire that website necessarily. But it can be familiar. Whether or not the user feels heard or understood should be our trifecta. We make it useful, we make it usable, and we make it familiar. And we know because we've done research. We get to know the design language that already exists. We develop questions. Go out and ask people, I built this thing. Will you tell me what you think of it? I want you to try and sign up for my thing on this application, Mr. Potential Customer. Tell me, is it difficult or is it easy? We have to do those kinds of interactions. We have to get out in the real world. We've got to talk to people, and we've got to get them to use our thing. We've got to research to make sure that what we're creating is something that people are going to be using. Right? Start with a hypothesis. Use science. Prove or disprove it. We've got to have empathy. Really know and understand the people who'll be using your design. What sort of cognitive biases, good or bad, are they bringing to the table? Get to know the people you're communicating to you. Again, research, talk, communicate, sit down, get to know them, find out what those shared experiences are, develop customer personas so you can put a name and a face to that audience. And then finally, growth mindset. Continue to learn new things. Continue to reiterate and go back and refresh and go back to the research, go back to the empathy exercises, continue to grow and learn and get to know people better and better and better. So through research, testing, and empathy, we can better understand the end user and better anticipate their expectations regarding content, navigation, and interactivity. Anticipating user expectations leads to a better end user experience. You don't have to memorize the map, just know how to read one. I don't know where I got that. I may have said that, but probably not. That's way too clever. Probably Wikipedia, actually. So, we're almost done. Are we? Yeah, I think so. We should wrap up soon. These two books helped me really understand usability and user experience. Trying to impart good user experience on a design can feel overwhelmingly complex. It does not have to be complicated. The Design of Everyday Things by Don Norman. I already kind of mentioned that book earlier on. It's a little weighty. It's very scientific, but it really helps lay the foundation, the case for why we need to do our research before we can design with authority. And then the Steve Crook book, Don't Make Me Think, is designed for people with smaller brains like myself. It is aptly titled, Don't Make Me Think. He presents the case for empathy in design. If you've done your research, you will be able to empathize. It's at the heart of creating good user experience. At the end of the day, being a good UX designer, or I should say a better UX designer, is the same secret sauce as being a better designer in general. You put your learn into practice. You put what you learn into practice. And then you learn more, and then you put that into practice. And you keep going that over and over and over. There are rules to obey and rules to break. But as long as we keep reaching out to find out who the people are that we are trying to communicate to, the better we'll be at communicating with them. Thank you. Okay, bye. Any questions? Oh, time's up. Oh, sorry, go ahead. Yes, you have a question.
You mentioned about research. Do you have any bullet point list for doing the research or methods?
That's a great question. So it's all over the place. It really depends on the context of what you are trying to create and who you're trying to create it for. So you might find yourself in a train station talking to people about stuff. You may find yourself at a car wash. There's a lot of different opportunities for understanding people better, but really what you want to make sure that the context is similar to who you're trying to communicate with. In terms of the practical, like what kind of questions you should ask, I would start there. I don't have any of that on this computer. So I got a new computer and all of that stuff's on that computer. If you Google, which is great, you guys been to the Google? It's awesome. There are a set of questions that you can come up with. A good rule of thumb is to not ever ask yes or no questions, or questions that have a yes or no answer. You want to do the Socratic method. You want to get information and have a conversation with them. So don't ask, do you like the color red? Ask, why do you have a favorite color, and what is that favorite color? So then you get a story about that color. You find out why their favorite color changed. And this creates a conversation where you can continue to ask more questions. If you show up with a clipboard of questions, it's not necessarily bad, but that's more of, I don't know. I don't think you're going to get the same information. As long as you're able to go off the clipboard and put the clipboard aside and continue to listen to what they're saying, I think you're on the right path. Did that answer your question? That was kind of a politician answer. What do you think? Okay. Any other questions? Of course. Yes. 3-question limit.
So through your research, have you ever experienced something that was unexpected? That you were asking questions and you had a list of questions, and then your responses kind of made you feel like, oh, I'm throwing off.
All the time. I've had people cry. I've had people tell me, this was a bad day for me to talk, and then you become. So I'm a heart person on my sleeve for sure. I mean, if I talk about this story, I'm going to cry, and so I'm just going to tell you a brief overview of the things that can happen, and you will find yourself being a shoulder to cry on. You'll find yourself helping people. You will be giving directions to people. There's all sorts of things that you can do. There's nothing that really stands out in my mind as being like more poignant than anything else. What's always been amazing to me is what's changed over time is that it's harder to interview people. It's become more complicated. Just like it's harder to do cold calling because people are a lot more not conservative. They're nervous. They're mistrustful of strangers. And they're afraid if they answer your questions and they speak openly that something's going to spill out that maybe they don't want you to know about, right? Or that you're somehow going to have a picture of them. You can now steal their identity. I mean, people are that afraid, unfortunately. And so your approach needs to be like that cold call salesperson. You need to be ready to accept rejection. Ready to hear people say, no, I don't have the time for it. But I think that's why we don't go door to door asking questions. We go to where people are at. We go to, like if you go to the Amtrak station and, you just kind of casually walk around talking to people, be honest and open, tell them what it is that you're doing. If you say, I'm doing market research, that's going to freak people out. But if you introduce yourself and say, look, I'm trying to launch a product, and I'm trying to determine if there's even a need for this product. And because of where we're at right now, because of you, I think you would be a good candidate, right? Get them to feel important about being taking the time to answer those questions. Know how long the questions are going to take to state that so that they're not like, oh, this could take 45 minutes and I got to catch this train. Just little things like that. Did you have another question? You got one more. No? Okay, anybody else? Awesome. Thank you for letting me talk to you guys. I appreciate it.